Well, good evening for everybody. We'll begin with the conference Emotions and Neurobiology of Violence by the Dr. Feggy Ostrosky. Feggy Ostrosky is professor of neurophysiology at the Faculty of Psychology in UNAM, where she also head of neuropsychology and physiopsychology laboratory of the graduate school. Her primary interest includes the development of neurophysiological tests for Spanish-speaking population, the study of cultural and educational effects of neuropsychological testing, and neuropsychological and psychophysiological profiles of several neuropsychiatry and medical disorders, like violence and antisocial individuals, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer, and schizophrenia. She has published a lot of papers in specialized journals, 6 neuropsychological tests, and is author of 23 books. 23 books. Okay, let's begin the doctoral house. Sorry.
I'm really happy to be here. I think this is a wonderful meeting. I'm sorry I haven't been able to be all the time here, but I always said that they should send all the politicians and candidates like Trump and Hillary Clinton and Peña and Osorio Chong to my lab so I can check their criminal minds. But I should also check the people who spoke in these meetings, you know. You're going to see that my talk, I always have been working with data and working. And then yesterday it was really a very nice talk, although I criticized it. It was really a philosophical question. How are things there, far away, no? And I'm there working with a criminal. So I think next time you send me all the professors and I check them out. I'll put their brain and their psychology. So since 1994, I have been, I would say privileged by chances of a life, not because I decided to do it. I've been studying several criminal minds. One of my first clients was Mario Aburto, who was the guy who is accused of killing Luis Donaldo Colosio. Then I work with Juana Barraza Samperio, who is a serial killer who is accused of killing 18 women, old age women, and attempt to murder other 2. And here, you know, criminal minds like serial killers, it's really like a fascinating, twisted mind because they have to kill at least 3 people and they have to have direct contact with the victim. So it's really a ritual what they do. And this is like she choked their victims. I have also been working, I have worked with the organized crime. This Mexican CIA said, why don't you go and check them out? I said, wow. You know, I always feel like Judy Foster in The Silence of the Lamb. And I said, let's do it. And when I'm there, I said, what am I doing here? So this is Ardilla, who is like a big capo of the criminal organization. And he was cracking laughing when he was picked up, you know. And everyone said, why is he laughing about? They always laugh, because they know they're going to escape or go out. There are people like these terrible guys from Veracruz who rape a young woman who are really very from the upper rich class of Veracruz who just rape another woman, you know, a person that they know. And these are like kids who become sicarios. And he's like an 11-year-old who became a sicario. So one of the questions that came about is what causes violent behavior? If there are critical periods for intervention, What are the key issues the preventive programs should include? Can we do something about it? Should we work with the children, with the family, with the society? Or if through the study of criminal brain, can we have an effect on the moral development of our children? So what causes prosocial or violent behavior? I think that everybody is like looking to have children or to educate children with moral integrity. And that means people who are honest, who are compromised with society, who are not corrupted. And just like the university students, which we are so blessed to work with. And how can we raise children who have moral integrity? So this is like what I was saying. How can we raise children in this society where the nexus, it's a complex and ambiguous world where there's a fragile bonds between the family, the school, the society? How can we do that? So antisocial behavior can cause great suffering. It can go from bullying to your friends. Last week, we heard that some kids were trying to cut the tongue of another boy in school, or going on crimes such as robbing and killing others. From the neuropsychology standpoint of view, we know that frontal lobe, the part of the brain that it's like recent development, damage or organization, can have an impact on prosocial behavior. And that early experiences like traumatic events, formal education, and early interpersonal relationship can alter the functioning of the frontal lobe. It doesn't have to be a damage, it's how it's connected. It's interesting because the frontal lobe is the last to develop and it takes a long time. So you're lucky because it keeps on growing and maturing well beyond 20 years. So you have hope, and I have hope also. But it's interesting because from the neurobiology point of view, we know that certain characteristics that lie on the foundation of moral behavior are inherent to the species, especially humans. And humans are born with a guide that leads toward moral development. So there are a number of inborn responses that supposedly help them to act ethically. For example, empathy is part of our native endowment. Newborns can cry when they hear others cry and show signs of pleasure at happy sounds as cooing and laughter. So what factors can contribute to a full development of moral integrity? And I think that was a question yesterday, if suffering can help to do that. From the psychological point of view, some people will say you should reinforce good behavior and punish bad behavior. So that's like just like some people will say, but that doesn't really help. If you just do that, then you run into the risk. Studies shown that if you just educate by these behaviors, then you will not do the wrongdoing when there's a chance to be caught, like when we just run out of the stop signs if there's no police or there's no camera that will take us. So it's important that people internalize, make their value. Other people will say, let's teach values. You shall not, like the Bible. Don't rob, don't desire the wife of your neighbor or the husband of your neighbor, all that. But just like theory of values doesn't help. I want to tell you that we were interviewing a Sicario, a kingpin who killed 30 people. And I always have to say that this is the Sicario, not my student. The Sicario looks works much better than my students, and he's really nice, Cesar. So if you hear him in a conference, don't run. He's nice. He's a nice. So we were interviewing this Sicario, and I said, did you rape them also? And I said, what? How dare you? And I said, why not? Because there are values, doctor. So values, just in theory, they don't work. You should go from not rob, kill, cause damage versus I will not do it. And that implies the internalization of the rules, that you are convinced that you have to, that it's important for you. So the problem is that violent behavior is alarmingly common in all the societies. It's a matter of public health problem. It can go from domestic violence to street crimes. So one of the questions is what moves human beings to hurt others, including relatives or strangers, and if that behavior can be stopped or controlled. So in an effort to fight this tendency, there's an increased research aimed at understanding the causes of violent behavior and the development of efficient treatments. So some of the questions neuroscience tries to answer is how can an adaptive behavior, such as aggression, can turn into violence? So there's a distinct difference between aggression and violence. Aggression is an innate biological response, is a trait selected by nature for its biological advantage. So we have a central nervous system, a biological system that will help us to defend our kids. Imagine a wolf who cannot defend their offsprings, so the species will die. But the nature has inhibitors of that aggression. So aggression, it looks to ensure the individual and his descendant survival, is a natural and adaptive behavior, but violence is an aggression that's hypertrophic. It's aggression with the intention to cause psychological or physical pain, suffering to the other, and it doesn't have a survival motive. So it's important that we are born with a predisposed towards aggression, and later life, we learn in which moment we have to express this aggression. And aggression is inherent to human beings, but violent behavior is learned. So one of the questions is, we know that's going on. What can we do? How and what generate these violent individuals? So that was one of my questions. So I have several books. I published this book with a student of philosophy who is a student of Olbet, and he's from Colombia, and he's a philosopher. So we published the book, Criminal Minds, Do They Choose to Be Bad? It's just like a title, so we will sell the book. But it's really, it really goes into how philosophy has analyzed moral judgment and how neuroscience has approached that issue. So it was an interesting experiment. So where do I get my sample, my very fine clients? I go to state prisons, to federal high security prisons, and I also study violent individuals such as violent husbands and police, like judicial police. So when we talk about violent behavior, it's not just that single issue. And probably you'll say, oh, of course. There are individual risk factor, family risk factor, and social factors. And they interact in certain way that they produce violence. And what I have tried to do is to see what are these factors. I don't have all the answers, but that's how I try to approach it. So from the individual subject, from the psychiatric point of view, you can have primary or secondary violence. And we talk about secondary violence when there are other causes that cause you to be violent, such as depression, like personalidad limítrofe. It's like these people borderline personality. They love you one day and they hate you the other one, for example. And the use of drugs and alcohol, and environment can make violence worse. So these are secondary causes, Because if you take care of depression, like if you are depressed, usually with every 20% of increase in your depression state, it will increase 80% the violence against your partner, either physically or psychologically. So these are secondary causes. But I don't care about secondary causes. I care about the really bad guys. So in order for me to study them, I have to really do a psychiatric evaluation and just like rule out that they don't have other secondary causes. And these are people who are labeled as antisocial personality disorder and psychopaths. And they are not the same. Those are different labels, although people use it exchangeable, but they are not. So who are they? In this book, we stated that when you talk about primary violence, you should talk about first psychopathy. Psychopathy, it has to do with a genetic component in interaction with environment, and I will make clear that. But then we have sociopathy, and sociopathy is an acquired problem, and you can have neuronal size sociopathy or cultural sociopathy. So it's important from the criminology point of view that you should really see with whom you are talking, because if you want to rehabilitate, you have to make this distinction because there are different treatments for each one of them. So when we talk about psychopathy is a personality disorder. It's like a mask. They look good, but they are really evil. So it's a personality disorder. They don't hear voices. It's not psychosis. They don't hear voices. They will say, go and kill somebody. It's not that. It's just like a personality. And it just like manifests in three areas. In their interpersonal relations, people with excessive sense of self-value, they are superficially charming, they're easy liars, and they're manipulative. In the affectivity, they lack the ability to feel emotions. And we have some studies of neuroimaging that we were talking a little bit yesterday. We didn't talk about that. But like psychopaths, they don't feel the pain. They don't feel the suffering. So it's difficult to lie a program that is just like they will feel the suffering because they don't feel it. And neuroimaging studies put like pain images, and the brain doesn't light up. In you, I hope, it lights up certain areas when you see pain things. But in them, the new studies, I'm working with Jean Desetti from the University of Chicago. We're doing some studies, and they found that in psychopaths, you maybe can light up those areas. If you tell them, you are feeling that pain. And if they imagine they are feeling the pain, then they light up the area. So that will open a new field of treatment of putting them in society. So it's like a thing that's going on. So in behavior, they usually are responsible, impulsive, they do not have goals, and have parasitical relations with others. So you can see Donald Trump there, you can see Peña Nieto there, you can see a lot of people, maybe you, I don't know you. I know that Olga is not there, or Daniel. They are not. And Katia are there. So how many psychopaths are? It has been estimated there are 1 to 3% of the population. In Mexico, we are saying there are around 1 million because it's more current in guys than women. And you'll see it's about genetic things. And it just like goes, when you have the diagnosis of psychopaths, you can have children characteristic of psychopathic behavior, but you diagnose psychopathy after 18 years old. So we're talking about 1 million subjects. And in prison population, there are 20%. So it's interesting. That study, we made them in the prison. So 75% of the prisons are not psychopaths, they are sociopaths, and 20% are psychopaths. So they are higher than in the normal population, but they are there. Usually it's where they are, because not all of them are violent. When we talk about neural sociopathy, I'm saying that the damage to the orbitofrontal cortex, which it's out behind the frontal area, it's orbital because it's the orbital area. If you are damaged, like with children who are the shaking syndrome, you can damage those areas. Or certain drugs can affect the orbitofrontal cortex. And those people, they lack the capacity to perceive pain and suffering from others. You don't recognize it, but they don't perceive that. And then we have this big issue of cultural sociopathy, which is terrible. And then it's acquired from experience that force the individual to change their lifestyle. For example, children who follow the organized crime, los niños sicarios, and they get into this new environment and they have the structures in the brain to feel pain, but they just turns them off because they want to belong to this new setting. And that's terrible. This is the case of Edgar Jimenez Lugo, El Ponchis, he was born from illegal immigrants from Cuernavaca who went to San Diego. The father was addicted to cocaine and also alcoholic. The mother also used cocaine. And when he was born, he had the abstinential syndrome of when you have drug abstinence. And so the foster care of San Diego said, this is an illegal guy, send him to Cuernavaca. So they sent him back to live with the mother, with the abuela, with the grandmother. And when Ponchis was 8 years old, the abuela died, and he just left walking in the streets of Cuernavaca, where the cartel of the Beltran Leiva said, come, work with us. And he became more dangerous and more violent. He will kidnap people and then put his phone, and he will hurt the people and put the videos in the YouTube thing. So it's terrible what's happening with suffering, with pain, and that's how he was accepted. So when we as society see all these children in the streets and we said, oh, what can I do? It's terrible. We should do something, because if not, they will back up against us. So we have to get involved. This is these are like young people. This is terrible, who just put in internet, in the social networks, how they use these guns and how they attack people. And they are really happy about that and telling all these terrible things they've done. And these young people are the ones who just get involved with gangs, and these gangs get hired by the organized crime. And then we have this issue. There's a book, there's Los Niños de Nadie. It's the voice of nobody. But these are people, like in Mexico, they said we have a demographic advantage because we have a very young population that's young, and everybody's going to help the old. And that what happened is that we have 25 millions, and from there are between 7 and 10 who are ninis. Nini says, ni estudio ni trabajo, I don't work, nor I don't study. And those are the people who are in jail. So that's Mexico. I have to make this joke because here at the university, they said we have a lot of ninis also, because they no se jubilan ni se mueren. They didn't, how do you say that? No se jubilan, they don't retire and they don't die. So we have lots of ninis, and people are saying, give me your job. So we have ninis outside and inside the university. But anyhow, so there's a big problem because this is the young society. So I have these studies that I have been published a lot, and I compare what's the brain or the neuropsychological and emotional functions of interns who are non-psychopaths, like sociopaths, and interns who are psychopaths. And I compare it to controls. But, it's interesting because if I just compare people in jail against controls, people outside, they said, oh, that's nonsense because, in the jail there institutionalization effects, and it's not fair. So that's why I compare the same conditions and to see if there's something special about them. So what did I study? I study emotions. Emotions are very important. I study neuropsychology. I do neuropsychological tests, electrophysiology. I don't do an EEG like the EEG. I can teach you in 3 minutes how to engañar. Well, engañar al polígrafo, cheat the polygraph, but you have to pay me a little amount. But in 3 minutes, I can do it. So the polygraph is not working. I do other type of electrophysiology. I do neuroimaging. I do genetics, and I also study the social aspects, how they were studied. So one of my questions is what happened to the brain? The brain is a fantastic organ that just like it's 1.5 kilo, and it just is the seed. This has some effect. It's beautiful, but it's not working. But anyhow, it's the brain, and the brain is like a beautiful thing. It is the seed of our suffering, of our pain, of our creativity, of love, of our hate. So I wanted to know what's happening in the brain. So this is like the old killer lady, and this is how I met her, with her Winnie Pooh thing when I met her. And she was like una luchadora, wrestler. And she was the silence lady. And that was her uniform. And I said, why did you put your name that, silence lady? She said, I just like to observe and just watch. And that's how she killed. She's choked their victims. And it's interesting because all of the serial killers kill something of them when they are choosing their victims. She killed the mother because the mother she had a very bad relationship. The other killed children, like Garavito in Ecuador. Other kills the mata gay, the gay killer who kills gays. So the type of victim that you kill, it's interesting. This is an actual victim. She used to choke them. And that's how I met them. And I was there and I said, weren't you afraid? And I'm going to tell you the truth. When I was talking to her, I said, what's the key issue where it will trigger her instinct to kill? Said, I hope it's not the wrinkles. Yeah, I wouldn't laugh. I would say, oh. So she wouldn't watch my wrinkles and didn't choke me, but she didn't kill me. We are doing in some of the violent people neuroimaging studies. We want to study how they process fear. These are Ekman's phases of fear against neutral stimuli, and we want to see if they have fear. We also have a battery of emotions. They are like pleasure, we use visual stimulus. We have normal stimuli, neutral stimuli, moral stimuli, and all these stimuli. And I don't have the time to go in detail, but what we found is there are like these areas of the brain that are function differently. The amygdala, which is a structure that's related to social fear, it's smaller and doesn't activate as much. Here's the amygdala. Oops, sorry. I'm telling you all the things. Here. So it's like not activated. And this area, which is the orbitofrontal cortex, is not activated when they see the stimuli who have moral content, like children in the streets or like old people who are like hurt or whatever. And then we have this area, which is the angulus gyrus, that is related to intersensory communication. And then we also study the areas of the brain. In the brain, the areas that produce emotions are not the same, they're regulated. So we study how they are communicated, and then we find the uncinate fasciculus, it's not as thick as in subjects who are not violent. And these things, I'm using it to develop some programs that I'm going to be telling you in a little while to preventive programs. So we also do evoke potentials. Meanwhile, they are watching. This is La Mata Viejitas. And we also do some other paradigms where we put semantic processing. We put like a psychopath is really difficult to detect because they are liars. So we are developed these tests where you put like congruent words like bueno, perdonar, agradable, cuidar, nice, to take care, correcto, proteger. There are a lot of words. And we put words that are incongruent, like bueno, asesinar, agradable, torturar, it's nice to torture. And in your brain, there's a brain that goes on at the 400 milliseconds. It's like if I tell you, I ate a sandwich of, what did you think? Sandwich of meat or ham. In Spanish, so this is the wave, the N100 wave, and this is a psychopath that is not generating that wave. And then we have a pedophile test. I'm a nice woman, I do these terrible things, but once I said, what am I doing with my life? Thinking about all these things, but I work with pedophiles, and these are like congruent works, like sex with adults and sex with children. And if you put sex with children, you will generate these, and the pedophile will not generate that. So this is like the topographic effect of this wave. It's like a central parietal area at 400 milliseconds, and this is what happened in psychopaths. You don't see that wave. We also have neuropsychological tests, which are tests that can help us to know the cognitive profile. And we see difference, especially like we keep on going in the orbital areas of the brain with these paper measures against between the controls and the psychopaths. And when you have an orbitofrontal alteration, you have demand for immediate gratification, you have absence of fear of punishment, you are not constrained by social costumes, you have deterioration of intuition and deterioration of impulse commands. So we also study genes, and they're not bad or good genes. Like genes are just like they produce enzymes that say how much neurotransmitter is between the neurons. So there's a certain gene that's related to MAO that is related to the enzymes that work in the metabolism of serotonin, dopamine, noradrenaline. All these neurotransmitters, they are very important for your behavior. So in the rats, in the lab, you can change, if you modify that gene, you can put from this nice little rat to a killer mouse. And they will start to kill their little friends. So that's why we went and studied also the genetics of ADS samples in the interns. And I work with very, very good geneticians, like people from the Instituto Mexicano de Psiquiatría, and then from the General Hospital, Beatriz Camarena, and another, I'll tell you his name, he's very important. So those are the ones who do the genetic analysis. So it's interesting because we found that we divide our sample of interns according to their level of psychopathy. So we measure with a very, very large questioning the total stress that they have in their life, if they were kicked with their hand open or with the hand closed, or if they were watching abuse, like sexual abuse, or if the early trauma that they have. And we published this paper, and it was like we have different levels. The higher the level of your psychopathy, this is high psychopathy, middle psychopathy, and low psychopathy, it is the higher of the total early trauma that you have. So I published that, and it's interesting because some people in France wrote me, and I said, you should know my research, because what you publish. So they said that they are working with this population, with rats. I don't know why it's not working now. Well, you have to imagine. So they put these rats and they stress them before they are adolescents. They put them in these water tanks and they're like drowning. It's there. I don't do that. They're drowning. And they stress them a lot. And what happened with these rats? It's just terrible. Let's see. It's working. So these rats, when they go out and you put the hand, they will bite the hand. And these are rats from they're the brothers and sisters of this one, who were not stressed, and they are not so aggressive. And you will say, well, that makes sense. It's terrible to be stressed, but it's related to the stress that I found. I want to show you, that's not the issue. The issue is that 3 generations, they are the offsprings of these rats. They are the same as the parents. And they didn't see the father biting the mother, or it was not a social issue. They were just born like that. So that goes into epigenetics. So epigenetics is related that it's usually the histones are the protein that tied the genome. And when there's stress, these histones, they are not so tight, and then the genes that you already have are activated. So we have genes love fish, for example, but we don't use it. We don't need them. So this is an epigenetic phenomenon, that the environment just turn on these genes. And that's really scary because we are living in a very violent environment. So I found there are some, individual factors that I already mentioned a few. There are familial risk factors, but there are also social factors. And this is the yin and yang of humanity. And this is the world is always and will always be filled with good and evil, because good and evil is the yin and yang of human condition. And I don't say that. Who said that is Philip Zimbardo, who is a social psychology. And he talks about the Lucifer effect. And Lucifer effect is the negatives that people can become, not the negatives that people are. Evil is the exercise of power to intentionally harm people psychologically, to hurt people physically, to destroy people morally or ideas, and to commit crimes up against humanity. That's how he describes that. And, he's tried to explain what happened in the Second World War, where you have these terrible problems, or what happened with the jails of Abu Ghraib, where the soldier abused the other prisoners, or what happened to our own people with the immigrants that tried to go to another place just for looking for a better life. They go into these terrible trains in La Bestia, and they are hurt by the Mexicans also. They hurt them because they just want to look for another opportunity, or like Trump, for example. So what's happening with the government? The government just built jails and put more people there. It's just easy for them to do that. And that's terrible because that just triggers more aggression and more violence. If you put an aggressive rat in isolation, it will get worse. Serotonin levels will increase or decrease, will affect, so they will be worse. So when people don't obey in the jails, they put it in isolation, and they trigger more aggression. So it's terrible. Also, like social media, you can download videos how to do bullying with a video, or, it's really terrible. And in a brain that it's developing, that's hurting the development of the frontal lobe. So what's happening is that society is really defending themselves. So this is in Tepito, and it's a advertencia, ratero a que agarremos, en la madre le daremos. In English, it doesn't look so nice. It looks, as if we catch, is as if we smack, but it's really worse. En la madre is really bad. We fuck you if we catch you. So, what causes children to have prosocial and aggressive tendency? We found in our studies is there are 3 critical periods: at 3 years old, at 7 years old, and at 13. And that's from the interviews that I make with these people. And at 3 years old, they said, I was terrible. I have behavioral problems. I always said no to what they were telling me. And it's interesting because that's related to the amygdala. The amygdala, it's related to to fear, to the processing of fear. And if you don't have fear that your mother will not love you if you kick your brother or if you do something, then you don't obey, you don't care. So it's important to have a little bit of fear, not a lot of fear. So if you don't have the amygdala functioning, you don't give a damn. And then at 5 and 7, they have problems in academic development. They don't learn to read at the same rate. And that's related to the singular area that I found that is not so well functioning. And then at 13 years old, they go into gangs. And that's related to the orbitofrontal cortex. So I think that we can try to explain. I don't want to be very, very reductionist, but their brain correlates to those behaviors. So what should we do? This is an economist, James Hackman. He's a Nobel Prize. And he's saying that you should invest at the preschool and school age because the rate of return to the investment in human capital is really higher than if you invest here. And of course, that makes sense. If you invest in children before they develop all this psychopathic behavior, then you will not have people who let school, who are have high-risk pregnancy, who get into drugs and all that. But the government don't care because they're not going to invest in a program. They will see results in 20 years because they are not there. There's no election in Mexico, so they don't care. So that's a big issue. So we try to convince, in this morning, I was with my group at the place in Xochimilco, far away, where doing these programs. We convinced the DIF to support us. But we have done this in in these areas, high poverty areas. It's not because there are bad people there, it's just there's more stress there. So we go. And then we work also in Tepito. And the intervention program is to work with the mothers, with the primary takers, which usually is the grandmother, not the mother. The father is not there. She has several wives at the same time, and the mother has to go to work, and the grandmother is the one who takes care. So these programs teach the mother or the primary caretaker how to stimulate the children, to stimulate language, executive functions, cognition, and then we also have group discussions with the mother about parenting style, effective communication, how to promote social, emotional, and physical growth. So it's interesting because what I told you, we are trying to stimulate the frontal lobe, the prefrontal cortex, which it goes very slowly, matures very slowly. So we have a very large time frames to really attack that problem. So experience sculpture, the brain, and we study executive function. We have this test where I'm going to go fast, where we apply those tests before the program. So here are the children, and we apply before the program started, and we have to have this type of testing to test inhibition. So we have an angel and a devil, and we say, you should touch, oh, shit. Sorry about the shit. You should touch what the angel said. The angel said, touch your nose, and the devil said, touch your tummy. And when they see the sun, they have to see night, and when they say the moon, they say day. So it's like inhibition. We want to see how inhibition is working. And then we have delay gratification, where we said, I brought you a present, but you cannot look. And they have to stay like that 1 minute. And we're saying, don't look, don't look. And they, bite, and some of them don't. And we are checking how many cheating they do. And delay gratification is a test that have been used in many, many studies since like 30 years. And then we have these profiles, and then we also check the parenting style. When we interview the mothers and say, how are you? All of them are Mother Teresa. They are wonderful mothers. But if we ask them, we ask the children, this is a girl who is throwing a stone to the dog, and this mother is laughing. This is like kicking, scolding. This one doesn't care. And this one is explaining that she shouldn't do. How's your mother? So then we have a story. And it's interesting that we find a correlation between this parenting style and the frontal lobe functions. It's very interesting. I don't have the time, but I have the data, and we have published. So we do the program. We work there in like wherever we can. And it's really like it's not a lecture. We just like play with them, and we dance with them and all that. And then we give them a diploma. And it's interesting because it lasts 25 sessions, and then we see how it changed. I'm not going. And we also teach resilience. I think resilience is the name of rebound. Is that everybody, when they get stressed, it's like when you hit push, you are distorted like a coil, but then you get back. We suffer, everybody. And when you stress, there are biological factors that help you to recover from stress. It's called allostasis. But if you don't recover, if you are stressed all the time, then you have damage. Where do you think? In the hippocampo, which is related to memory, in the amygdala, which is related to fear, and in the prefrontal cortex. And it's not the stress that you receive, it's the stress that you perceive. If you perceive that the bad people, things will last forever, and that you don't have self-efficacy, then that stress will hurt you. And how can you increase your self-efficacy? Well, with attachment, with the caregivers, with society. And so we try to explain that. So we feel that the mother is like an external brain, that gradually, if you change this external brain of the mother, she will change the brain of the kid. And so this is one of our attendants. She was really dirty. She was depressed. She has 5 children. And this is what she is. She looks really pretty. And we didn't say wash up for the photo. She changed when she felt that it was changing, that the things are having outcomes, positive outcomes. So poverty, they said, I'm really poor. I have a poverty problem because I don't have anything. But poverty is not knowing, and is not being able, is feeling helpless. So I think that if we give them hope, and these programs, not just hope, you can change the outcome of these students. So education is give them knowledge so they can have power, and so they can have possessions. So violence is related to income distribution, not only to poverty. Is when part of the society has everything and the other one doesn't have anything. And moral integrity is things that we have to work with all the society, individual, the family. Even if you're really consistent with your kid, he goes to the school and the teacher will say, why did you cheat? Why did you give a kick in the guy so we can win the football? And then the social media, and then the governments that we have that keep on doing those things, it's really a terrible thing. So moral integrity, it's a matter of everybody. So I think that genes have to do with how the brain functions and how the brain responds to emotions and how these emotions make us relate to each other. And these turn on or off the genes. So thank you very much.
questions? Yeah.
Thank you very much for your talk. So, in approximately 90% of the violence events that your photo shows, most of the individuals are men. And I was just seeing some data that showed that 95% of the mothers all over the world are 95 are men. Would you expect to see this difference, for instance, in frontal activity when you make sex comparison? So that seems to be something. So violence seems to, given those data, be linked to sexual. So you would expect this difference to be seen in comparison?
Oh, yes, we're doing that. Well, first, you don't see so many pictures of women because when I go to jail with the women, it's really boring. All of them are innocent. They are virgins. They didn't do anything. And they are terrible to work with. The guys will say, I did kill that guy. I didn't kill that guy. You know, I killed other 50, but that guy, I didn't kill him. So it's just really easy to work with the guys. That's one. But it's related, I think, to chromosomes. It's like the guy is XY and the woman is XX. So you are like a Y that lost a little piece, right? You are, well, it's a joke. But, well, so this, when you have two X in this Mao gene that's related to the X chromosome, if you have two X, you have one that protects you. But if you just have one X, then you are in risk for violence. So usually violence is more frequent in guy. You have more, especially for extreme violence, than women. We are really bad, but not as bad as guys. And we have doing orbitofrontal analysis of the brain. And the orbitofrontal areas are larger in volume in the woman than in the men. The orbitofrontal are related to decision based on emotions. And we are finding difference. So we are comparing in controls and in violent people, women and men. And we are seeing difference. But you are right. It's related to biology.
You have preliminary. So you have already preliminary results showing that similar data as the one that you're getting with your controlling violent people versus control as when you are comparing men versus
Yes.
women?
I haven't had many violent, I'm doing that research. I have some money from the university and I'm doing that research with violent people outside, which is not hard to find.
Thanks. This is just about clarification. You were clear at the beginning about what doesn't work, what you think doesn't work. So punishment doesn't, teaching values, you said, doesn't. So I'm just trying to get clear about exactly what it is that does work. It's working with children, but what is it? Some of what you seem to be doing with the children was testing them for various things, executive control, for example. Some of it looks a lot like teaching values. So, for example, the throwing of the rock at the dog. I take it the better parent there, if you'll allow that expression, was the one who explained why that was a bad idea. So that looks a bit like teaching values, the thing I thought didn't work.
Right.
So anyways, the general clarification is just what are the things that you were doing with the children that you think do work? And secondly, do you know that they do work in the sense that you've looked at rates of offending in the groups that you've worked with?
Well, I work with the mothers so they will change their parenting style. So what works is to be a parent if you are like a very dictatorship style or a very permissive style or indifferent style. We know that doesn't work. You just raise children who doesn't have social responsibility, who are scared, to that. So how do you have to be? You have to be authoritarian but democratic. You have to make rules and then negotiate the rules, and that's okay. So you have to be that. We know that's styling.
Which sounds a little bit like teaching values.
No, because it's not theory. It's with the practical stuff.
Explaining that the dog has feelings.
Right, and said if it hurts, it's just like working also with empathy. The dog will cry and all that. But then we work frontal lobe functions. I think education is in crisis because we now in schools, they teach memory. And you don't need your memory anymore. You go into internet and you find whatever you want. You have to teach frontal lobe functions, executive functions. You have to teach. Working memory is the ability to manipulate the information in your brain. You have to teach cognitive flexibility because the world is changing every time. And you have to teach inhibition, cognitive and motor inhibition. And that's why we teach. We teach that to the mothers, so they work with the children and they change that.
And have you been working with a big enough group and a long enough time to see if this really will?
We are working, we have 4 years
rates.
following one, and it changed the parenting style, but they are still young. But I'm not the only one who's doing that. Like people have doing that in the US, and also like James Hackman, he's like a Nobel Prize and he's now in education, and we talk, and he's doing that, and they follow with Posner. Posner is a great psychologist, and they found that those children, when they followed them 15 years after, they did not go out of school, they don't have hypertension, they are not fat, they don't have obesity problems, they don't have pregnancy. So in another work in China, so it's working.
And are less violent, because that's
right. That's the group that you have to invest. At that time, you have to invest early.
Sorry, amongst all the good effects, you didn't mention that they're less violent, but I take it they
right. There's less violence.
Okay,
right.
Okay. Thanks. That's helpful.
Thanks very much for the talk. At the very beginning, you drew a distinction between sociopathy and psychopathy, and you said psychopathy is distinguished by its genetic component. And I wanted to ask you about the evidence for significant genetic component to violence, given some of the evidence you showed about developmental trajectories, and also given really striking cross-national and cross-regional variation in the degree of violence. To what degree do you think genes are actually a significant contributor? What would you say is the effect size of genetics?
It will be like related to how it's indirect, but the Mao genes have been measured in very violent people and psychopaths.
Yeah, but 40% of the population have them.
Right.
So,
that's why I work, because it's how you express those genes.
Yeah.
It's the environment who will turn on the genes. So the thing is like this, the guy is Kiel, I think is Kiel or another one who has lots of money, not like me, that I have to sneak out the criminals from the jail and hope they don't kill me and all that. He just take the magnetic resonance into the jail system. I don't know if you read that interview in Science, and the guy and the mother of this guy, of the researchers, said, you should check your brain because we came from a criminal background. So he did. He checked his brain and he checked his genes, and he looked exactly as the psychopaths in the jail. So the interviewer from Science said, so what's going on? Your studies doesn't work. I said, no, I come from an environment that didn't turn on my genes. So that's the story.
Yeah, but you see the incident, I mean, if you look at the difference between MAOAL in the psychopathic population and in the general population, it's significantly different, but it's not a big margin.
Right.
And of course, that means that there is a lot of offenders diagnosed with psychopathy who don't have the gene, and the vast majority of people with the gene.
Right. I'm not saying a causal effect, but I think that in order, that's why I'm saying it's not everything is biology, but biology helps. But, you can see, I have 3 children, and they're completely different with the, even if they're the same genes. Well, sort of. Maybe the bad guy is like his father.
The spirit behind the question is when we talk about psychopathy as genetic, it gives the impression that you can be born bad. There can be people who are born evil, and that's a misleading.
Well, but there are genes. I know.
Why not say everyone is sociopathic? But as with cancer, some people have greater tendencies to acquire. Everyone in this population is sociopathic, but some people have greater.
I know, but is that when you work with psychopaths, they're really different. They are not like sociopaths. Have you worked with them?
by sociopaths, I mean people who are
Like they steal, they're a little bad, they change, but psychopaths, wow, they really are like, I'm saying high level of psychopath.
But you're assuming that that's genetic. So I'm saying that outcome. Somebody can test positively on the hair PCLR, can test positively on the DSM-5
Right.
antisocial.
No, I understand. It's dangerous to say it's your genes, but I'm not saying genes is everything. I'm saying a little bit. A little bit, because it goes into how your brain is organized. I know, it's a little circular. You're right.
Thanks a lot. It was a bit overwhelming, all this information, but I have a question, and maybe it's naive, but I have it. And because
I'm scared of your question because you started yesterday like that.
No. No, about psychopaths. Because you said that one of the characteristics is lack ability to feel emotions, and maybe it's a common sense notion, but emotions have a lot to do with what keeps us doing things, you know? So you're saying that they don't feel pleasure in killing? That they don't feel things?
I think
Why do they do them then?
Right. It's overgeneralized a little bit of emotions. They don't feel pain. They lack the empathy, because, you know, you talk with these guys and they cut like el mochorejas, no? He would cut the ears, and other guys that I was telling yesterday, he cut people into little pieces, and he enjoyed doing that. They're sadists, and these people that are like doing bad things just because. It's nothing that, so yes, it's related to more pain and lack of fear. And it's not settled. You know, what the SETI is finding is that they do feel the pain if you make them think that they are suffering. I have the slides, I can show you later, but you put pain in it. If I tell you that I have my toe hurts, like the little toe, you feel that it's hurting yours, because that's empathy. It's like your brain is reaction. But they don't feel it. But if you tell them, okay, don't. Now imagine that's happening to you. Make that. And they turn on the areas. Not as much as the other one. So they make a big change in how do you have to rehabilitate. Because if you put them in jail, what will you do? You teach them how to be a better psychopath if you teach them emotions.
This question is kind of related to what she said. I read somewhere once I can't remember where, that there were a high number of psychopaths working in the financial sector.
Oh.
And they're very motivated to get money, right? But imagine if they don't accomplish what they wanted to accomplish, wouldn't they feel some sort of subjective pain? That it's not related to others?
They are
but
disappointed, but not subjective pain. You know, there's a lot of successful, I think this globalized world is perfect for psychopaths. And those are called successful psychopaths. Successful, because they are not in jail, that's why they're successful. But it's like a society that really, you know, I think Donald Trump is a psychopath. He just has all these characteristics. Well, it doesn't matter if he's not.
My question is more like, if maybe it's not that they don't have an ability to feel pain, it's just that they don't have an ability to relate to the pain of others.
Right.
But internally,
you know, I'm going to tell you, I ask people, when will you be willing to kill somebody? I will ask you, when? You.
me?
Uh-huh. Will you be willing to kill?
Yeah, to save someone I care about.
Well, that's a survival thing, right? But,
Or myself,
you know, right. But, you know, the psychopaths will kill everybody. They don't care. You know, you will kill somebody if your children are at risk, or your father. That's the answer that everybody said. But they don't care. They are different people. So I just want to tell the philosopher yesterday, that you're talking, no, Michael, I just want to tell you, I didn't tell you yesterday, but you know about that. I think that when you said about suffering emotions, that in Mexico they have raised the years that you are in jail. if you kidnap somebody and if you kill several, you will be like 2,000 years in jail, you know? So when I asked the guys, will you do that again to kidnap or to kill? They said, oh, yes, of course. You know, they don't care about the punishment or the suffering. They will say, I will not do it if I'm going to make my family be hurt. You know, I don't know if I'm explaining. Is jail cuts the emotional ties that the individual has outside. And the people who wants to go out and reintegrate is because they have a family setting and an environment that will have an emotional upbringing in them. And I think that is a little bit what you said about the suffering, but the suffering, it has to include the emotion related to that. I don't know if I'm very clear about that.
I want to ask a very unrelated question, but I'm very curious. Can psychopaths form any kind of attachment, even to objects, without empathy?
They do to their children in a different way. Like the Mataviejitas has 4 children, and she has granddaughters. And she will tell me about the granddaughter. But it's like the children will say, I don't think my mother did. She was not such a nice mother, but she never no nos maltrataba. She didn't treat us bad. And she wasn't like loving mother. So they do have a sort of an attachment. It's just related to pain and to fear.
They wouldn't feel pain if they lost if she lost her granddaughter?
No, not as you. If how do I say that? Because I measure your brain and her brain, and it's just like a little activity.
I've read that the emotional dimensions of psychopathy don't correlate highly with the antisocial behavior, so the criminal violence.
Right, because you have psychopaths who are not aggressive.
But do you think of the features that drive violence in psychopathy, do you think there are certain dimensions that are especially important, like impulsivity, or
right.
What would you say is the feature we should be most targeting in you've looked at executive function?
Well, it's related to behavioral inhibition, because like these successful psychopaths, they have sort of a good inhibition, and they can manipulate others, so they will win a lot of money and the stock exchange and all that. But they are not aggressive. They control. But if you see the debate yesterday, like Donald Trump, he will go out and he will say, she's such a nasty woman. 10 minutes ago, he said, I'm such a nice guy. I never talk bad about women. And then she's a nasty one, you know? So, yeah, say that.
It's a little question respect with some mechanism could damage the frontal part of brain. It's about the disease like, for example, tumors in thyroid gland that hormonal disorders can make or can
right, can affect your brain, right.
But, for example, people who have tumors in suprarrenal glands maybe can go violent, get a shock of adrenaline, hate someone, and kill. And there is damage because they really don't want, they do it because...
Right, but this is a secondary violence. You know, yes, I have seen, I have a friend who is a neurosurgeon, and he operates on a very aggressive people who have problems in the brain, like tumors, or they have areas where they cannot control. So he operates. But that's secondary. I'm talking about primary. And then if you treat the suprarrenal problems or the tumors or whatever, then you get rid of the violence. It's just a secondary case.
And then about that, there is an kind of grade of responsibility about crimes. It's a risk about this kind of violence. Say someone is no responsibility. Someone has no responsibility of what they did because he or they or she is
Right. You know, they can say, it's my brain. Like Juana will say, she'll already show that I don't respond as we should, so I can use. So I recently published a book with some lawyers. It's really difficult. It's worse than philosopher, really. You don't understand a thing what they're talking about. But I wrote a book about neuro law and how neuroscience, the lawyers are using neuroscience to help their clients to get a lower condemned. So I think that also you have to show there's no intention. And if there's intention, and when I was showing Juana and I said, why are you here? And she said, I killed 3 women and all that and whatever. And I said, and is that a wrong thing to do? And she said, yes. I said, why? Because nobody has the right to take the life of others. So they have these frontal, the dorsolateral area, because the frontal lobe is very big. They know exactly what they should do and what they shouldn't. It's just they don't have the emotions to connect with those thoughts. So I will kick the door, the chair, or I cosify the people. Like my students will say, I bring the Macarella, and it's a computer. They put names because they put names to their pics, so they love them. And these people, they treat people as objects. So it's a different thing.
Thanks. Do you have found anybody or know about anybody that doesn't fit these your categories? I mean, neurosociopath, somebody that is between or outside?
Well, yes, there are global categories, and you try to fit all of them. Well, for me, it's helpful, but I haven't found anything because I try to put them. If not, I'll get really nervous. But I found I remember I was interviewing one who was just for robbery, and then I interviewed him, and then when I said, this is the worst psychopaths ever, I will go and tell the people in jail that he shouldn't go out. He was going out 1 week after, and I said, I'm not going to do it, because they said, you're not going out because remember that lady who came last week? She said, and he will send me to kill. So you are right. These are gross categories, probably are other ones, but they fit into my scheme.
Yeah, but I mean, not just in the way of diagnosis. I mean, in the analytical level, when you make all those studies, genetics, how's exactly the methodology you use to combine those tests to make a category, for example, to put them in a category?
I made regression analysis, and I see it's a statistical thing. Maybe I'm just really square for you, but I have this large sample, and I do regression analysis, and I see how much the genetic explain one group, how much it explain the other one.
But
there are others that don't explain.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't fit everybody, like Dr. said.
Thanks.
I have outliers, I know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.